What is up, everybody? Clint Lamb with Cover Crimson here to talk more Alabama spring practice updates. We have been going live every morning other than yesterday morning. We did have to go to Tuscaloosa, get some practice observations. That was certainly useful or helpful as far as the conversation is concerned. But we are back with the morning live show. Appreciate all you guys for being here. Roll Tide to you, the BD James. Appreciate you as always, brother. Good to see you, man. So we're going to be talking about several things. Let me go ahead and first update the actual discussion because we're going to be talking more about Daniel Hill. We're going to be talking about a black no contact jersey for Lottie Brooks. That might explain some of the things that we saw on Thursday, as far as him working behind Rico Scott in the slot, at least as far as those warm-up drills. Now, it might not have anything to do with it, but I did find it interesting because the practice clips, and we'll go ahead and pull it up just so you can see exactly what I'm talking about. In the practice video, as you can see, you've got Rico Scott there. You've got Ryan Williams, and then behind him is the number 3. Lottie Brooks switched his number from number 17 to number 3, and he seems to be in a black no-contact jersey. So I don't think that it's anything serious because he looked like he was moving extremely well when we were observing practice. We didn't get any sort of injury update. It might have been something that happened or occurred during or after we left, or it could be something where they just decided to move him into one of those jerseys because of, after we left and everything else. I don't know exactly what's going on. I'm sure we'll get some sort of update, but just wanted to at least point that out and discuss that for just a minute. And we'll be getting back to that here in just a second. Good point by Stephen Floyd. Wasn't Lottie in a car wreck after the season? He absolutely was. He absolutely was, and that's a good point. Don't know why I forgot that. Probably because he was moving so well. I mean, I thought on Thursday he looked great, and he was working behind Rico Scott, but if he hasn't been available really even leading up to spring, that, of course, they would probably work him in slowly, and that would explain the black no-contact jersey. So that is an excellent point. Don't know why I forgot all about that. Barry Hogle, what's going on, Clint? It is looking like they're going to start Brooks in the slot. Is it looking like they're going to start Brooks in the slot with possibly Rico and Ryan on the outside? Is that what it's looking like? I would say right now, Brooks is your projected starter in the slot for sure. I think Ryan Williams is one of your projected starters on the outside, and it's a matter of determining who else is going to start opposite Ryan Williams on the outside. Noah Rogers was working with the first group on Thursday. You also got Rico Scott, as you mentioned, as a possibility. You've got Derek Meadows. You've got Sadarian Morgan. You've got some options there. And so the competition, I more so view Rico as, he is an inside-out option. You can play him out on the perimeter. But once again, I've kind of continued to reiterate, you've got 3 guys out of the 6 that we're talking about being in that wide receiver rotation who have length and size. And that is Derek Meadows, Sadarian Morgan, and Noah Rogers. Now, Noah Rogers doesn't have the same size or length as the other 2 guys, but he's got some length. He's 6'2". He's weighing, I think, just maybe 201 pounds, if I'm not mistaken. So not this big, super huge physical presence, but he's got some of that size that he brings to the table. And so I've kind of discussed, okay, you've got those 3 options. You've got 3 what I would call, I wouldn't say Rico's undersized, but he's definitely not this lengthy, really tall, really long, wide receiver. So I would put him in the same group, at least to some extent, as Ryan Williams and Lottie Brooks. Are those going to be your 3 starters? And then you have the size kind of rotating in as wide receiver 4 and wide receiver 5? Or do you end up starting a guy like Noah Rogers or Derek Meadows or Sadarian Morgan to bring that size element into the starting lineup? And then Rico Scott is your inside-out number 4 wide receiver who can rotate in. That I also think is a possibility. But from what I've heard, they really like how Rico is developing. They really liked him last offseason. I know it kind of felt like that, he got a ton of hype, including from me, because I was hearing great things about him. Then you get into the season, the impact is kind of minimal. He is playing quite a bit, but as far as targets and stuff, not really having the type of role that we anticipated or expected. And he was already clearly the wide receiver 4 early. And then he started to kind of fall off even behind Lottie Brooks. I think a lot of that had to do with Brooks and just what he brings to the table. I think he's a special talent. I think as far as being able to play in the slot pretty consistently. Now, Rico can play in the slot as well, but kind of bringing a dynamic presence into the slot allowed them to play Ryan Williams a little bit more on the outside. So that was very beneficial for Ryan. And of course, Lottie was providing a very important impact to the offense, or bringing an impact to the offense. So, a long-winded way of saying Brooks in the slot, I definitely think that's going to be the case. I am so glad Steven brought up him being in that car accident. I do not, once again, don't know why that left my mind, but that makes a ton of sense as to why you're not only seeing him in a black no contact jersey, but also why he could be working behind Rico Scott. I wouldn't be worried about Lottie at all. Hopefully the wreck was any sort of lingering issues or recovery. Hopefully he's making a speedy recovery and can get back to 100%, but he looked good yesterday. I will point that out. Mimi's good morning, roll tide, enjoying the morning lives. I am too. Missed it yesterday. Hate I couldn't do it with you guys yesterday, but I absolutely love being here. I love getting my day started with you guys. Bring some energy, and then I hop off, and as soon as I hop off, it's right back to the grind, watching film, putting stuff together, and then if we need to, we go live again. So I'm excited to see Kane Womack today. I really am. He is going to be speaking, and we are going to get some defensive players as well. And there's a lot more returning on the defensive side of the football, at least in the secondary. There's a lot of potential options that they could bring out there. I don't know who we will get today. I don't know if they have announced that yet, but I'm looking forward to hearing from Kane, because Kane does a fantastic job as far as giving informative answers, thoughtful answers, things that we can actually take and chew on and learn something. It's not just, certain coaches, they will provide updates, injury updates. That's valuable. We can hop on here. We can talk about that. I absolutely appreciate that always. But a guy like Kane, he also brings a little bit of the thought process behind things, what it means, why they're doing it, why a certain position viewed a certain way, how it operates. And I always feel like when I come away from a Kane Womack interview, I've learned something myself. And I mean, really about the game or how his defense operates. I feel like he's in some ways giving us little nuggets to teach us along the way. And I always appreciate that. I really do. So I'm looking forward to hearing from him. And if there's anything major that we need to talk about, we will certainly be going live. Now, granted, I don't even know if I'm supposed to announce this. I might get in trouble for this. I don't know. But my brother he's not having nothing. My sister-in-law, they are having their first child. That is expected today. So if something ends up happening this afternoon, I need to be ready. Luckily it's in Birmingham, so I can get where I need to get pretty quickly. So that could end up throwing a wrench in things as far as how my day operates. But I really hope that we hear from Kane Womack. And of course we're hearing from Kane Womack. I hope we hear something about the Bandits and Wolves. I fully expect that to be a question. We've already got some things from Kalen DeBoer as far as, who's playing where and kind of what they're expecting from that group. But I think Kane will probably give a lot more of an in-depth thought process behind maybe some changes they're looking to make with those positions, certain guys, how they're kind of the Wolves and the Bandits are practicing together now. I just think that hopefully we get some good information out of that. Brandon from DC, good to hear from you, brother. Appreciate the $9.99 super chat. What's up, Clint? I found it odd that Grubb would overstep and lock in any spots along the offensive line in the spring other than Carroll. Clem should have time to assess and weigh in on the decision. Thoughts? Now, this is a very fair point, and this is something that Christian Miller also brought up yesterday on Twitter. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that I hate the idea. If Delgatti is clearly establishing himself as the best option you have at center, I get it. If Jackson Lloyd has done everything he needed to do from all throughout last season as a true freshman, you loved how he was developing and learning, and you feel like he's moving in the right direction. You get post-season, he continues that. He continues to emerge as a leader. He's working hard in the weight room. All of that is great. I do understand the point of people saying Adrian Clem hasn't really got a chance. He didn't see these guys last season. He didn't see, he did get here in the offseason a little bit later, but I mean, he hadn't really had a chance to evaluate these guys. So in some ways, it is kind of, you say overstep. I don't think that's an absurd thing to say, to be fair, because in some ways it is an overstep. it's essentially Ryan Grubb telling you, I've made the call on who our starting left tackle is. I've made the call on who our starting center is. Now, Grant, I'm not saying he didn't consult or discuss anything with Adrian Clem. I just have a hard time believing that Clem being there for such a limited amount of time, he didn't even get a chance to see these guys in a full padded practice. I mean, I guess they were in pads yesterday, but it was the first one. It was right after practice. I know he didn't have any time to talk things out with Ryan Grubb between when Grubb spoke to the media and all of that. So I don't like it from that aspect. I think that's a fair criticism. They have their own way of going about things. People are going to have various opinions on it, but I definitely see that side of it. I really do. With that being said, I also like that they kind of have given themselves some direction. Jackson Lloyd, you've got a solidified left tackle starter. You've got Michael Carroll, who we all knew was going to be a starter. And then you've got Rayson Delgatti. One of the things that I found interesting is when he was asked about Mike Carroll, he brought up kind of him having that flexibility. So I've kind of locked in Michael Carroll as the right tackle. I still think as of right now, that's going to be the plan. But I also think that it's interesting that Javen James was playing right tackle from what we saw, or practicing behind Mike Carroll at right tackle as the number 2 guy. And he mentioned Mike Carroll's ability to flex. So it is still possible that if Javen James proves to be one of your best 5 offensive linemen, even James could stick at tackle. We've talked about maybe James moving inside the guard. I think he would have that ability, but it is possible that he was brought in to start at tackle for Alabama. That was his goal or expectation. And he still might have that opportunity to start at right tackle. And if he proves to be a capable, one of their best 5 options along their offensive line, at that point, maybe you can reassess and move Mike Carroll inside, where I think he could be absolutely dominant. So I don't think, from a motivation standpoint, any of the guys who are wanting to compete at one of the 2 tackle spots, just because they've essentially named Jackson Lloyd their starting left tackle because he doesn't have that flexibility, he's not going to move inside. He can play left and right tackle, more of a left tackle in my opinion, but he could play right tackle, but he doesn't have the inside versatility. So if you don't lock him into one of those starting spots at tackle, then, he hasn't locked up a spot yet. Mike Carroll, on the other hand, he is a guy that they feel like could move inside and do some really good things inside. So all these guys who are still wanting to start at one of those tackle spots, they still believe they have the opportunity on the right side with them maybe moving Mike Carroll inside. So that's a long-winded way of saying that. But yes, it is an interesting conversation that we will continue to have as the spring continues. Let's see. James Knight, overall size is mostly irrelevant for a wide receiver. Proof, just 2. Reaper, Malachi Tony. What is not irrelevant is how criminally underutilized Brooks was last season. I get that. You brought in Isaiah Horton to be a dude in your wide receiver room. You had Jeremy Bernard, who was a dude in your wide receiver room. And you had Ryan Williams, who, despite the fact that he was underperforming, were you ever going to see a guy be that exciting as a freshman and have that type of talent that was, while inconsistent, put on display as a first-year player, as a young 17-year-old? And then as soon as he is not doing great, he's having some struggles, you immediately move off of him and you're paying him all this NIL money, and he's kind of become one of the faces of your program right now. I mean, I just think that Brooks' role, while he deserved, in my opinion, a larger role, I also understand how that was pretty difficult to do. Right now, you have 2 what I would call established guys, and Brooks is one of them. The other is Ryan. And I have consistently said, I think that Brooks is going to be Alabama's wide receiver 1, and he's going to be their most consistent option. Now, I like what I'm seeing from Ryan. I mentioned some of that yesterday. So definitely expecting a bounce back season from him. And if you can get more consistency, the flashes, are up there with anybody in the country. There's a reason that he was perceived the way that he was going into last season. And so I'm excited to see what that ends up looking like for him. And you say size is mostly irrelevant for a wide receiver. It is, to an extent. But I also think that is an element. If you have a size element, you don't want to – if you've got like a quarterback, a Tua Tagovailoa type of quarterback who's got the pinpoint accuracy, the the quick slants, the getting the football out of his hand, and then allowing the wide receivers to make plays after the catch, the size is not really relevant. It's more the route runners and understanding that Tua Tagovailoa is going to put them in a position to create yardage after the catch. But a lot of times you do want those guys where they can bring that mismatch problem, where you're trying. I mean, Nick Saban talked about it all the time at tight end. And I think that also carries over to wide receiver when you're talking about the Sedarian Morgan types. And what I mean by that is when you have a height, weight, speed wide receiver who is a mismatch problem, it's difficult to find a defensive player who can match both the size and the athleticism. Maybe you can match the size up, put a linebacker on them or a bigger safety. Do they have the athleticism to keep up with him, the speed to keep up with him? Okay, maybe you elect to go with more of the athleticism route. You want to be able to match that. Okay, but how big is that player? Can he match up physically against that guy? So it can be a unicorn type of, it can create a situation where defenses have to have a unicorn type of defender to cover said player. But Alabama certainly has the corners and the length and all of that stuff to be able to cover that type of player. So their defense is actually set up to cover a Sedarian Morgan or a Derek Meadows. To say it's irrelevant, you say mostly irrelevant, so you're not completely dismissing it. I don't know that I would go that far, but I understand what you're saying, and I do think to some extent you are correct. Barry Hogle, hey Clint, based on everybody's current weights when they came into spring practice, who is currently sitting at the most optimal weight to be the starting Bandit? I think optimal based off of what it's been, I think it would be Cavante Henry. Him being 272 pounds, probably needs to get a little bit bigger. I kind of have viewed the Bandit as a guy who needs to be somewhere between 275 and 280. Des Zulu certainly is nowhere close. Marion Matthews currently is nowhere close, being down in the low 250s. I think that Devin Tompkins, while he is playing Bandit, we'll get to that here in just a second, him being 298 pounds, that is not really how I have viewed the Bandit position. So I think he's probably a little too heavy or a little on the heavier side. So I would say right now it would be Cavante Henry off the top of my head, unless I'm missing somebody. But I guess we should go ahead and bring this up. They did with the practice clips that were released on Thursday. One of the things that I noticed, there's one clip in particular, and man, you got to do some investigating to see it. I went and found some stuff where some of the defensive linemen were in the background, Devin Tompkins in particular. I looked at what he was wearing. He was spatted up. It was black tape. He had the white gloves on top of some white, I think it was white wristbands, if I'm not mistaken. The helmet design, I looked at all of that when he was in the background. Then I went and compared it to an up close where they're showing the trenches, and I'm like, okay, that guy on the far side is Devin Tompkins. So what I see is Terrence Green was at nose. You had Isaiah Faga, who was at the 3 tech. We don't know exactly where they were aligned, but he was at defensive tackle. And then at Bandit on the far side, it was Devin Tompkins. And then you had Yanze Pierre at Wolf. And the reason I think that's important is you saw Rayson Delgatti, who has all been named a starter at this point. You had Jackson Lloyd. I noticed him. Nick Brooks was working with the first team at left guard while we were in attendance of practice. He was at left guard. And then Noah Rogers, who had been working with the first team at wide receiver, ran past the screen. And so he was on the field. What that told me, it was probably first team offense versus first team defense. And so you saw Devin Tompkins, Terrence Green, and Isaiah Fagan. Now remember, London Simmons is out for the spring. So he would, in my opinion, typically be that starting 3 tech. It is also interesting that Edric Hill had typically been that number 2 rotational 3 tech. So the fact that it's Isaiah Faga, that's interesting to me. Now I've had concerns about Faga's length. And when you do have him at defensive tackle, if he's at nose, the furthest he's going out is a 3 tech, typically. If he's playing the 3 tech, though, he might go as far out as being what I would say a 30 front defensive end. And the lack of length really starts to hurt him when you put him over a tackle as a 4-eye or a 4 or as a 5. So, but if they are doing what I think they're going to be doing, playing more 4-man fronts, Isaiah Faga playing that 3 tech is no problem because he's not going to be asked to slide further outside. They're not going to be going in those 3-man fronts. So that is at least something to keep in mind with that grouping. Devin Tompkins, first of all, looks fantastic. They showed a couple of clips where he looked like he was manhandling some folks, including Michael Carroll. It was super up close, so tough to kind of take away a ton from it. But I was really impressed with some of the things that I saw from Devin Tompkins. And I know the coaching staff is sky high on him. I love the idea of playing him as a bandit. And I also want to point out when Lennon Simmons is on the field with that grouping, what I would call a heavy nickel package, then you can go in those 30 fronts because you can move Lennon Simmons out. He's got the length to be a 3-4 defensive end. You've got Devin Tompkins, obviously being 6'5", 298 pounds. That's a 3-4 defensive end. And then Terrence Green can play a 0, a 1, a 2-eye, a 3. He can play all of that stuff. So, and by the way, Terrence Green looks pretty good. Looks leaned up, but looks long and looks mean. So I was encouraged by him as well. Let's see. Jay Moneyman, what I'm nervous about is the fact that they may be favoring Lloyd and Carroll on a personal level and not allowing a true competition because they don't want to upset those two for whatever reason. I mean, I don't know. That's purely speculation. I don't know that there's anything that really supports that in particular. It could be a number of different things. Carroll's earned his keep. So, I mean, no one's questioning, wait a minute, Michael Carroll's already a starter? No one's questioning that. So if you want to have that conversation with Lloyd, I more so understand it. He is a returning player. Grubb did get a lot of opportunities to see him. But what I will say is you can't really criticize them for naming Jackson Lloyd the starting left tackle and say, well, it's just because Grubb's familiar with him and stuff. Because they also named Delgatti the starting center, and he just transferred in. So Ryan Grubb has no more experience or exposure to him as he does anybody else. So, like, it's I understand what you're saying, but keep some of that in mind, I guess. James Knight A. One more thing. My God, Jaira Edwards is a hell of a good-looking player, young player. And, of course, I like Mincy better than Sabb plus Red Morgan also. Jaira Edwards does look incredible. He looks the part physically. We talked a lot about that yesterday. But, and of course, I like Mincy better than Sabb plus Red Morgan. Mincy, I like the talent, love the length, brings a physicality to the table. But I think he had some up and down play in 2025. So I'm not there. I think Keon Sabb, number one, he was injured a couple of years ago, and he was playing through injury. If you want to have any criticism of Sabb, it's that he has been kind of banged up quite a bit because I don't think he was at 100% at various points this past season either. And so that's now 2 years he's been in Tuscaloosa, and 2 years he's kind of dealt with some nagging injuries, and one that ended his season prematurely. So if you want to go that route, okay. But I think there's still, Sabb's a good player. Is he an elite player? Is he going to be a guy who's a day 1 or day 2 draft pick? Is he Caleb Downs? No. But he's a good starting safety in college football. I do think he's got an NFL future. I could see him maybe going in that same range as a Jordan Battle, late day 2, like 3rd round. Could also have a season that causes him to fall down the draft board or even climb some. I won't speculate really either way or predict either way at this point, but I like all 3 of those guys, or all 4 really. Their secondary is incredible, whether it be at Wolf, perimeter corner, or safety. It's as loaded as I've seen it in quite a while. Roll Tide, Clint. Roll Tide to you as well. Cody Ledoux, Roll Tide, Clint. What 3 freshmen do you think has a chance to play meaningful snaps? I think Jaira, Griffin, and Crowell. I think Jamarian Matthews has a chance. I like him a lot. Now, granted, I felt like from a skill set standpoint, he was probably one of the closest things that you had on the roster as far as being able to be that traditional bandit because he did play on the interior in high school. I have this belief that he could probably continue to put on mass and size and end up being a 280, 285 pound, 290 pound Jonathan Allen type. Not saying to that extent and being this All-American and top, at one point he some people thought he might even go number 1 overall or definitely in the top 10. First round draft pick. Won't go that far for Matthews. It's too early for that, but I think he has that type of skill set and versatility where he could play 4I, but with the way that things are currently set up, or we think they're going to be set up where there's going to be some blurred lines, I'm not saying that he's going to have a more difficult time getting on the field, but I feel better about Zulu. I think Avonte Henry does fit that a little bit better, provides some juice off the edge. I think he can play the B gap, if you needed him to, for sure. But I think he's a good C gap defender as well. Devin Tompkins helping out there on the perimeter or on the edge, excuse me. So I've kind of softened on that. Jaira, I do think is going to play. Xavier Griffin, from a physical standpoint, I think he's a lot closer to contributing than I originally thought that he would be. And considering we're only in March, what's he going to look like in 6 or 7 more months? So as long as he continues to grow and develop and learn, I do think he's going to figure out a way to have some sort of contribution. I still think that his clearest path to playing time and getting meaningful reps right now, granted, this could change based off of how he's progressing as an off-ball linebacker. I still think the upside is tremendous there, but I think it would be as a situational pass rusher. I think what he brings to the table as far as the twitch, the bend, the explosiveness, Alabama does not have a bunch of guys that caliber of player on the roster. They got some good pass rushers. They got some guys that can do different things. They got some speed to power guys. But as far as being twitched up and really explosive, I think Xavier Griffin brings some rare traits as a pass rusher. So not only do I think they're going to utilize that in the long term, making him a versatile chess piece, but I also think that you can utilize that situationally early on. So I definitely think he's going to be one of them. And then Isaiah, definitely not Isaiah, not the Georgia running back, but Xavier Crowell, that is definitely someone that I think, now he's dealing with a soft tissue issue that Ryan Grubb talked about on Thursday. Got to be able to get healthy. I understand the logic that Grubb had. He pretty much said, we're letting them kind of, bang around a little bit, get comfortable, and how we operate where, then we're going to give them a week off for spring break. Then we're going to come back and get after it. Crowell, we're expecting him to be a big part of our, an important piece in our running back room and an important piece to our run game. So we feel no need to rush him back. We're kind of going to be cautious with him, and then we'll hit the ground running with him once it reaches post-spring break. I agree with that wholeheartedly. That slows down the early talk about him, but physically I think he looks ready, and I think he'll have the opportunity to be a part of that running back rotation. James Nide, there's no way in hell that Grubb is named the starting left tackle. He just ran his big mouth saying stuff way too early. I do believe he took the authority on Simpson, however. We are never going to agree on Simpson. That's just one thing that I've noticed that you've said in the past. Simpson right now is trending towards being the second quarterback drafted. And we'll have to wait and see, because at one point in time, Jalen Milroe was projected to be or some people viewed him as a day one draft pick, and then he fell all the way to the third round and fell pretty deep into the third round, if I recall correctly. Maybe something happens with Ty Simpson similar. I understand that this quarterback class being relatively weak could prevent that to that same extent, but right now he's viewed as a strong possibility to go in the first round. He was a very, very good player. He can do things that other quarterbacks just can't do. From a mind perspective, he is very, very advanced, and he had some mobility and the accuracy and the ball placement. Injuries slowed him down. So this idea that Ryan Grubb took authority on Simpson, it was pretty clear to anybody that you talked to behind the scenes, player and staff, that Ty Simpson was the dude last offseason. And so when people suggest that it was anything other than that, I don't know who you're talking to. Maybe you're talking to a player who had a personal relationship with one of the other guys and they were pushing something different or felt something different because they wanted one of their guys to be it. But anybody that I talked to that seemed as unbiased as possible, when they say who's got the best command of the locker room and who's doing the best job, who's the most consistent amongst this group, it was always Ty Simpson. So, I don't agree there. Never will. As far as Grubb and the starting left tackle, I don't know what you mean by that either. There's no way in hell that Grubb named has named the starting left tackle. Are you saying that Adrian Clem named Jackson Lloyd the starting left tackle? Because essentially, Jackson Lloyd was named the starting left tackle yesterday. And even when there was pushback, he doubled, Ryan Grubb doubled down on it and said there is no competition. That is our left tackle. So someone named him the starting left tackle. So either Adrian Clem came in and very quickly, in a couple of months, without seeing him on the field really, named him as a starting left tackle, or it was Ryan Grubb. Which do we think it was? I think it was Ryan Grubb. So I don't know. Brandon from DC, appreciate the $1.99 super chat. How did Tompkins move in person? Well, now he's not, obviously we know. I mean, he's not this super twitched up, explosive edge, bendy type of pass rusher or edge guy. And granted, once again, didn't get a great look at the defensive line. And I would have loved to have seen them more, but I did try my best. That is the one player I was looking for. I was watching the defensive backs, watching the linebackers, trying to get some good looks at them. But every time I was peeking over, I was looking for one on the defensive line. And the very few things I saw him do, he moved well. I don't think it's enough for me to sit here and say, oh, he's a great mover, or I can give you any sort of definitive, stance or opinion on that. But based off of what I've seen, he's moving well, and he's bigger than he's ever been. 298 pounds. This was a guy who came out of high school at like 220 or I think it was actually 230. I mean, ended up playing as a freshman, I want to say, for USC at like 265 or 270 maybe. Then he quickly got up to 285. Then this past season, he was 290. Now he's 298. And I still think he's moving well. And I will once again say, I've continuously said, this is, in my opinion, what Kelby Collins brought to the table. He's bigger than Kelby Collins. He is much better than Kelby Collins. But Kelby was the one that we were having the conversations. Does he play inside? Does he play outside? And then he ended up kind of settling in his biggest contributions while he was a drive by drive rotational piece, meaning he would rotate in even on early downs and stay out there for an entire drive. He was predominantly, his biggest impact, in my opinion, came as an interior pass rusher in some of those obvious passing situations. I think while Devin Tompkins is going to be a starter, he's going to be a good player, whether it be playing bandit or that 3-tech. I think his biggest contribution will be as an interior pass rusher like Kelby Collins. This is why I've been making that comparison between the two. Want to continue to reiterate, not saying it's going to be Kelby Collins' role. This is going to be a plus version of that. But I like him a lot, Brandon. I really do. Boom Pringle, appreciate the $5 super chat. Not a stretch, but Jaira not only has a Caleb Downs physique, but also has some of his traits. Yes. I don't think that's crazy to say. I don't think he's to that extent coming out of high school. I saw such an advanced player coming out of high school. First of all, there's a reason he was a top 10 recruit, and a lot of people feel like he's one of, if not the best players available in this NFL draft, but that he will go top 10 despite the fact that he plays safety. The reason for that is he's so technically advanced. He does everything extremely well. He's a super intelligent player, but he doesn't, I don't know that he does anything at an absolute elite level. Maybe run defense. I think he's got a great feel for that. But the playmaking ability, typically when you would talk about a safety going in the top 10, being one of those outliers, that would be an extreme playmaker at the safety position. And I don't think that Caleb Downs is that. So I kind of have questions on if he'll actually end up going in the top 10. But Jaira, I don't know that he's even quite Caleb Downs, but he does have the well-roundedness that Caleb Downs brought to the table pretty much out the gate. Being a guy who could cover, being a guy who could, from a pick up the defense from a physical standpoint, like his stature, but also, the physicality in which he played with, the run stopping ability, a lot of those types of things, the well-roundedness, very much so. And Jaira Edwards is a heat-seeking missile. He loves contact. I've said multiple times, he can blitz off the edge. He can play man coverage, zone coverage. Still working on some things from a technical standpoint. He's a young player, but I noticed even going through some of those drills that I watched yesterday, I saw him improve in real time. The first time he would do things, you saw Kane Womack pull him to the side, coach him up a little bit, and he would do it correctly the next time. I was encouraged by that. So I'm a big Jira Edwards fan. Mimi's, tell us how you really feel, Clint. I don't know what that has to do with. Maybe I get frustrated because I don't understand the pushback on some of this stuff. I mean, a lot of people, they kind of, I think they just run with things and say it based off of really not talking to anybody. And granted, I mean, you've got people now, the whole Greg McElroy, Jalen Milroe thing. Greg's not pulling that out of thin air. He's talked to people. Certain people felt that way in the building, but I also think that there's a huge chunk of people who did not feel that way at all. And so you got to talk to both and get both sides. But it was the reason I'm saying some of these things about Ty Simpson is that it was always everybody that I talked to. No one ever gave me a varying opinion on Ty and be like, I just don't think he's really that great of a leader. I don't think that he's really, I always heard the same thing about him. It was so consistent. And that was talking to some players. It was talking to some people on the staff. And so to hear somebody come out and just say something completely different, that never makes sense to me. Especially when I'm like, have you talked to somebody that told you differently, or are you just saying that because that's how you felt or thought it should have been? Anyways, Bama Bob Warner, late to the party. Roll Tide to you as well. Kenneth Cannon, Carroll did say he does not want to move inside. He did say that. He said that he views himself as a tackle. Now, granted, I also think he's a team player. And so if they feel like that their best group is Jackson Lloyd at left tackle, whoever at left guard, Rayson Delgatti at center, and Javen James is proving to be a much more effective tackle than he is guard, and he's also proving to be one of your best 5 players, then Carroll moving inside. I don't think you would be happy about that, but I think you would do it and be okay with it. He does seem like a team player. Let's see. The BD James, I really hope that Sabb is more physical with his tackling when blitzing. I like his smarts, baiting quarterbacks into making throws that end up getting picked off. Yeah, that's the one thing. And it wasn't just Keon Sabb, but there's way too many times where he pulled up, wreck somebody. This ain't practice. They're not wearing a black no contact jersey. If they send you on a blitz and you can get a hit in, I understand that there's this fear of touching quarterbacks and getting thrown out of games and all of that stuff. But I also think you got to be able to turn it on and have an understanding based off of what you're seeing. If you have your head up and you're watching that quarterback, when he's starting to pull back, that if it's right as he's releasing, you're not getting called for a flag unless you do something dirty, hit him high, something like that. But as long as you're careful, take his head off. No. That's not the way to put that, because that will get you a penalty. Rock his world. I mean, destroy him if you can. And I think there were opportunities where at bare minimum, you were going to blow up the quarterback and he was going to feel your presence. And the next time he wants to step in and make a throw with pressure in his face, he's going to think twice. He's going to think twice about it. I would like to see a little bit more aggressiveness. And I think Zay Mincy, if I'm not mistaken, it was Zay that did a great job of that. When he was sent, he was trying to hit somebody. Let's see. G Limit, Noah Rogers is the guy. Yeah, I like Noah Rogers. He's another one that, once again, moved well. We only see so much from these guys in the periods that we watch, but he looks like a guy who's been around for a while, and done it before. And so, yeah, I'm excited about him as well. I'm sorry, I got distracted. I still got that clip pulled up. I don't even know. Yeah, we'll pull it back up. So this is what I was talking about earlier with Lottie Brooks being in a black no contact jersey. It's on my other screen as well, blown up a little bit, and I just noticed this. But I mean, look to the right of Ryan Williams. I'm pretty sure that is Xavier Crowell from the build, and it looks like a 1 and a 3. I don't have the video where I can play it and see if we see the full 13, but it looks like he's got a boot on his right ankle or his right foot. So I just noticed that. I don't know if anybody's mentioned it. I'm discovering that in real time, I guess. So that's interesting, but that also would make sense if they don't freak out. Ryan Grubb addressing it. He said soft tissue problem. What would that have to do? I don't know. I'm not gonna. That someone might have caught that in the background when they weren't supposed to, and maybe I shouldn't have brought that up. But anyways, Mimi's, you are saying what we're thinking, and that's my point. Sometimes I don't understand. Yeah, we're on the same page for sure, and that's totally fine. I mean, number one, you don't have to share my opinion. I just wish that instead of there is going to be you seeing something, you perceiving it a certain way, viewing it a certain way, and then you discussing it through that lens. I get that. But I also think that if you're going to say things like some of the stuff that people say, you need to have some sort of have talked to somebody. Like, and granted, it could even be secondary. Like, it could be a secondary, like you watch somebody and they say, hey, I've talked to these people and they said this. And then say, okay, well, you didn't talk to them directly, but at least somebody that you trust, whether you should trust them or not, I mean, that's up to you. But at least there's something to base that out of. And I never heard anything with Ty. Never made any sense. That's Marcelo. Appreciate the $5 super chat. Can Bama's NIL compete with Texas and Ohio? Greetings from Brazil. Very cool that you are in Brazil and you're watching. Thank you so much for being here. And yes, well, okay, let me rephrase. No, I don't think that Bama's NIL can compete with Texas. And I think that, Ohio State is certainly one of those that's willing to spend. Now, here's the thing, though. You'll have these programs that will hit these points where they will have a quick burst. They will have like a 1-year burst. I think Ohio State was one of those. They were willing, relative to the rest of college football, to spend way more money than anybody else in a singular given year. Have we heard about Ohio State swinging for the fences? And we've talked about Ohio State being one of the biggest spenders in NIL since then. They won their national championship, mission accomplished. And I just don't think they're the type of program where they can do that year in and year out. They're going to be in a respectable range, absolutely. But I can't really recall since then of them being like, oh, man, Ohio State they're spending on everybody. And that 1 year, I mean, it was like right now, who's that program? It's LSU. LSU with Jordan Seaton and Sam Levitt and a lot of these guys, wholly overpay. But they're willing to do it because Lane is so desperate. Ole Miss almost did it without him. And I don't think he wants to wait any time to build LSU up. I think he wants to win right now. And I think he wants a national championship right now where he can prove everybody wrong. As far as you say you couldn't do it at Ole Miss, and they almost did it without you, with an interim coach who had never been a head coach. And so maybe you should have stayed there. Now, granted, I do think year over year, it's easier to do it at LSU. I completely agree with that. But I think when that happened, A, I don't think he reacted great. I really don't. But B, I think that lit a fire under him. And I think that it already existed to some extent of it. We're trying to do this in year one. We're trying to get this turned around right now and get LSU to the Final Four teams and the national championship and maybe win a national championship. And so they're the team that just spent a ton of money. Texas Tech, they're doing it every year. Texas A&M, they're doing it every year. So can Alabama compete with those as far as year in and year out? No. If Texas decides we don't care what you're willing to spend on a guy, we can spend more, and we will spend more. If the most important thing to that player is money, Alabama's not winning that battle. So, no, they can't compete on that front. Number one, money is not everything to every player. Number two, I think the approach is you get them from high school. You give them a very respectable NIL package. You sell your culture. You sell their fit within, whether it be offense or defense, and you get the elite of the elite from the high school ranks. And then they fall in love with being at Alabama. they fall in love with playing for Kalen DeBoer or playing for Kane Womack or playing for Mo Linguist, your position coaches. And then when it comes time to now you're becoming the superstar, Lottie Brooks, Michael Carroll, whoever, and you've got suitors all over the place that are trying to get you in the portal. That player says there's some loyalty built in. There's yeah, money's great, and I need to be in a very respectable place if I'm going to stay here as far as the NIL front. But it's not about going to the highest bidder. I'm willing to take less money to stay here. I think that's the model for Alabama. And if you are doing a good job of evaluating players, then you'll have all the Cam Colemans and everything else already on the team. It's kind of doesn't mean that you're not going to go out and spend on transfer portal. You're absolutely going to do that. But I think that is more so the approach that Alabama is taking. And I think that's the correct call. I think that is how you are as competitive as you possibly can be. And if there's a certain player, the reason that they courted Cam Coleman is the relationship with Derek Nix, the fact that he probably would have liked to have stayed in the state of Alabama. There were reasons why. They didn't expect to be the highest bidder for Cam Coleman. They just were hoping that he would listen, and he did. And they could say, well, we're not going to offer you as much money, but here's some of the benefits of playing here. And they were hoping that he would ultimately choose to go that route. But I think Arch Manning certainly helped, having an established quarterback, the most money. It is still a very prestigious program. So they ended up winning out on that. But so hope that answered your question, man. JB, RTR, good morning, and roll tide to you as well. James Niday, just one of many important wide receiver stats, but 52% of the NFL leaders in receptions in 2025 of the top 25, and 60% of college were 6'1" and 205 or less. Mostly irrelevant as far as wide receiver size goes. Once again, yes, there are plenty of big-bodied wide receivers who bring an element to an offense. Nico Collins, Mike Evans. I mean, I could continue to name them. There are plenty of big-body guys. I mean, even, and granted, A.J. Brown, is he like super, is he as tall as those guys? No. But I mean, he's 225, he's 6'1", like 225. He's like running back size, linebacker size even. But he brings some size. Like I'm not saying that you got to have size. I'm saying that when you have a guy who can bring that type of impact, I mean, Cortland Sutton, Rome Odunze, who played for Kalen DeBoer at Washington. He was drafted top 10. He's kind of started to emerge as one of those guys. There's plenty. So I don't know. Once again, I don't think you're wrong, and the evidence backs you up. But I also think that the coaching staff, if they can get that type of impact, they covet length everywhere, every position. But they also like the ball winning ability. Sometimes just having that player who is like, you know what? It's not really there. They have a really good secondary, and they got guys covered. We're just going to throw it down there and see what happens. Like having that ball winner that can climb the ladder in contested catch situations and score points and bring in big-time catches, that is absolutely valuable. And that can be confidence building. But, yes, it is not so, I mean, I get what you're saying. I do. Sharpshooters Pod, appreciate you being here, brother. Hope you're doing well. Roll Tide, and I agree. Thank you so much, man. DD Animal. How much does it hurt recruiting when you recruit high school based on culture, but online you see fans call for the coach to be fired after every loss or attack players if they make mistakes? That's a good point. We talk about the culture within the locker room, within the building, all the time. What's the culture like overall playing for Alabama? It could be great in the locker room, and the whole goal is to shut out all the outside noise. But I know for a fact, because a lot of parents follow me on Twitter, and I know they follow a lot of other Bama media members as well. And probably, I don't know that they follow a ton of fans. Maybe they do, maybe they don't. But we know that they're on social media. And I know that it can't make them feel good. I don't care how much their kid's getting paid. They don't care. I mean, I'm not, you can sit here and say, oh, you get paid a lot of money, so anything we want to say about you, if we want to attack you personally, if we want to call you names, in some cases slurs. Like if we want to do that because you get paid, you're free reign for that. That's always been complete BS. You should be able to be criticized. If Ryan Williams is dropping passes, we should be able to say Ryan Williams needs to do a better job. He needs to stop dropping passes. But to sit here and take that a step further and say, oh, I can say whatever I want to about you, or I can get on your family members' post and talk about how awful the kid is to them. Nah, I never agree with that. And as a fan base, I think we could do a better job of saying, you know what, let's build a culture from a fan base perspective that people want to be a part of. No one wants to, I say no one. A lot of people don't want to buy into that. You're making me angry because I expect you to do well. You're not doing well. And so how I react to things as a person is I do the personal attacks, I do the low blows, and it makes me feel better about myself. And I'm not giving that up to have a better culture. You figure it out with me being able to do what I want to do. That is frustrating as hell. It is a toxic approach. And I am one of those people. If I feel like a guy deserves to be criticized, I'm going to criticize him. But I'm not going to do it in a destructive manner. I'm not going to attack the character. I'm not going to attack the person. I know they want to do well. Some guys are just lazy. And sometimes it's okay to just say a guy's kind of lazy. If you want to say that dude's lazy, okay, that's fine. But stop there. Just call them what they are. I don't know. I never understood why you would want to put that out there, because at least 80% of the time you're 100% wrong. You have no idea what you're talking about. That guy's doing everything in his power to perform as well as he can on the field, and he just feels defeated and beat down, and you're saying it's okay. I can still do that because he gets paid a lot of money. I don't pay it. Somebody else pays it. I am out nothing. If you're paying that player $1 million to beat Alabama, I think you'd have a little bit more of a say. I still don't think you should go about it that way. But I mean, I really couldn't tell you that you can't. But it's the people that aren't even contributing to Yay Alabama or contributing the absolute bare minimum who feel like they have a right to cross lines with people. It's okay to criticize. Once again, it's not okay to attack. Anyways. Yeah, apparently that struck a nerve. Bama Bob Warner, Germ was my favorite player and MVP of the team last year. Who do you see being that number one leader of the team this year? Ooh, number one leader. That's a good question. Okay, so quarterback, running back, wide receiver. You know, I know Ryan really wants to lead. You got to be productive on the field. You know, it's really tough to get everybody to buy into you as a leader if you're saying all the right things and everybody believes in you, and then you go out there and you're kind of dropping passes and, you know, doing some of that stuff. But I know that the team really respects him. They know his work ethic off the field. I don't think that has ever been questioned, even dating back to high school. He was Mr. Everything in high school. He reclassified, then he became Mr. Everything in Alabama almost immediately because of how he started his career off. And then he instantly just jumped when that play against Georgia, just jumped to a completely different stratosphere. And no matter where he's been at, you've never had, oh, this guy's kind of lazy behind the scenes. You know, he doesn't put in the work behind the scenes. He's always put in the work, and his teammates have always seen that. So from that standpoint, they have no problem following him. He's not asking anybody to do anything that he's not willing to do himself times 10. But you also have to be productive on the field to be fully that guy. So I think Michael Carroll is going to be one of those guys. I think from a nastiness, a physicality, a demand of his teammates, I think that he's got a lot of that. I think Jan Pierre has the respect of everybody. Don't have any clearly established players. You know, Bray Hubbard is certainly going to be one of those guys. Zabian Brown is one of those guys. And then you'll have some new players that I don't know necessarily if they have established themselves as that guy, but like Devin Tompkins has assumed a leadership role. He's a pretty intimidating presence, great build, very well put together for 6'5", 298 pounds. And he's got a lot of those leadership qualities. So I think he's probably going to be one of those guys. London Simmons works extremely hard. I don't know that I could name one player, the number one leader, and I'm sorry that I can't. There's just too many options, but I think they got some good possibilities there for sure. Agent K, what's up, Clint? Good to see you here. Big Frank, I think the criticism contributed to Ryan Williams. He started trying too hard and it became counterproductive. I said that last year. You hit the nail on the head, Big Frank. You hit it. And what happens is if you focus too much on the problem and you're constantly stressed and worried about the problem, that can make the problem worse. That is what the yips are, in my opinion. Maybe that's not the technical book definition, but I think that Seth McLaughlin, when he was having his snapping issues, if he just could have relaxed, he would have been fine. An example that might not be overly popular, but I was a really good beer pong player back in the day when I was in college. But sometimes when I was, especially when I hadn't had enough liquid encouragement, I wasn't very good. And then when I just started relaxing because, certain substances helped, I would get into a flow and then you're just hitting everything. You're just letting your natural ability take over. I think that anytime you start overthinking something, you're doomed from that point. And I think Ryan dealt with that. I think Seth McLaughlin dealt with that. And McLaughlin got it back on track. He got an off season, he got a new program, and he was able to collect himself and become the best center or one of the best centers in college football. And so Ryan, from what I saw, he's been working extremely hard at his craft. And so I think he's going to be in a better position to, catch the football away from his body, trust himself a little bit more. Him playing back on the outside, I think, is going to get his confidence back. If nothing other than him switching outside. Sometimes it's just, hey, man, I've been here. This is where I'm comfortable. Last year I was doing something I wasn't really comfortable with, but now I'm back. Just changing that one thing can change everything from a confidence standpoint. And so I'm hoping that you do end up getting a lot of that from him this year, and I think that you will. Eric Forsyth, back on Simpson. Bo Nix's success makes me feel better about Ty's value. You don't have to have freakish athleticism and measurables for success in the NFL. Yes, and I do think in some ways, to be fair, Bo Nix is a little bit overrated, but he's a good player. And, I think he was worth the pick that he was drafted at. He's certainly stabilized Denver's quarterback situation. And, I think that Ty, he's never going to be this crazy, toolsy quarterback. It's so funny because how Ty is as a player versus what Jalen Milroe was as a player, or is as a player, he's still playing, is that Jalen was the toolsiest of the toolsy quarterbacks. Size, build, strength, arm strength, speed. He wasn't like the suddenness and stuff wasn't really there, but his straight line speed, his ability to outrun guys and be a special quarterback on the ground, he brought everything from a physical standpoint. Ty has some mobility. His arm is fun. It's not elite, but it's fun. But it's more of technically sound. Mechanically, he is on a different level. Processing on a different level. Ball placement and accuracy, different level. So he was like the polar opposite as Jalen Milroe. They both found a way to have some level of success in the college side of things. We'll see how both of them do as NFL quarterbacks. But one thing that would have helped Jalen Milroe is if he was in this quarterback class. I do think that we talked about him being a late third round draft pick. I think he would have went much higher than that had he been in this class because of people being desperate and falling in love with the tools. But, they had enough where there are a couple of teams were able to get, Tyler Shuck ended up being a good second round pick to the Saints. You had Jackson Dart, you had Cam Ward. So Ty's being viewed really as QB2. Milroe, I don't remember if he was necessarily QB4, but there were still at least three guys pretty clearly ahead of him on that front. So Stephen Floyd, we have to be able to analyze, praise, and criticize without getting personal. Bingo. And sometimes people even get upset at you for praising certain guys. That's where it was with the quarterback competition for 2 straight years. You couldn't praise Milroe without people getting upset about it because they didn't want Milroe to be the starter. And so you say one good thing about him, and it's like, well, he's got this problem, and this problem, though. It's like, okay, but and some of that's true, but he also is doing some good things. So let's just and people used to accuse me with Milroe in particular of flip-flopping on him, and I always argued, or maybe I'm just watching the games, and if he plays well, I come on here and I say he played well. And if he doesn't play well, I get on here and say he doesn't play well. Maybe I'm letting what actually takes place form how I view Jalen Milroe. after that Georgia game, I understand he kind of struggled a little bit in the second half, but based off of what I saw in the first half, especially with him doing some of the things in the short intermediate parts of the field, I was like, this guy could be a Heisman Trophy winner. This guy's the real deal. And he fell off after that. I didn't stick to my guns and say, well, I described him as a potential Heisman Trophy winner, so I got to stick to that and defend him from now until the end of time and come up with excuses. I reacted to what it was, which was there's been some fall off. That might look like flip-flopping, or it might just simply be me taking what information I'm given and making an opinion around that. And I'm not too stubborn to stick in on, one thing. Agent K, I'm big on Edwards right now. Absolutely. No, okay. We can go with both. Caleb Edwards, Jaira Edwards, pick it. I would suggest moving forward, because this is the second day in a row this happened. If you're talking about Jaira, say Jaira, Edwards, or you're talking about Caleb, say Caleb, just because I want to be able to, if you're talking about Caleb, I don't want to go down a rabbit hole of Jaira. And then it's like, well, that wasn't really what I was saying at all. But I like both of them. I think they're both good players, but I think you're talking about Jaira because he's been a part of the conversation. And yeah, I'm huge on him. Been huge on him. It was one of my favorite signings that Alabama had. I think there's a path here for him. I think he's a special talent. I don't personally understand. I think it was Rivals. They had him down like the 80s in their rankings. That's one that I would like to talk to him about and just say, what are you saying? Because I'm not going to say, oh, you're terrible, you're wrong. I just would like to know what the thought process is, because I don't see that. I see a guy who's versatile, can do everything extremely well, does some things on an elite level, and I really, really like the talent. And so I never really understood why he was down there. Justin Pearson, good to see you, brother. And Clint, I've been avoiding Alabama news. That makes sense. I haven't seen you in a while. I think you mentioned something on Twitter yesterday. I don't know if I got back to you, and if I didn't, I apologize. But you say, so Clint, I've been avoiding Alabama news because I don't want to be hurt again next year. I contributed to that. I did. I mean, a lot of the factors that I look at, I saw NFL talent with the offensive line. I saw experience just all over the place. So that makes me fall in love with the offensive line, despite the fact that they all weren't great fits. It's like, still, just rework your offense and make it fit. I liked the talent at wide receiver. I liked Ty Simpson. And Ty Simpson, he's going to be probably QB2 in this draft. So they're obviously, anybody that liked Ty Simpson, you can't hindsight and be like, I don't know what you were saying or talking about. He's obviously a very talented dude. Defensively, they had LT Overton. We were viewing as a borderline day one guy. Not going to go day one now, but at the time, more day two, but needed to be more, needed to improve as far as finishing. But you had Quay Russaw, a former 5-star recruit who we all really liked. They had plenty of dudes as far as top 100 recruits and stuff at that Wolf position. You had now Justin Jefferson and Deontay Lawson coming back at linebacker, on top of adding the number one linebacker out of the transfer portal in Nakai Hill-Green. Tim Keenan was a solid piece. On the back end, you were getting Dijon Lee, but you had 5-star Xavier Brown, former 5-star Damani Jackson. You had Deshaun Jones, who had done some good things in the slot. You had Bray Hubbard really start to come on strong. You were getting Keon Sabb back. You had Zay Mincy, who had done some good things in the bowl game. You had Ivan Taylor coming in. There was a lot to like on paper. And granted, here's what people don't understand. They were not an elite football team in 2025. They were not. But I saw somebody responded to one of my tweets, and they said Alabama was severely average or mid. I don't remember what they pretty much said that they were painfully average as a football team. They had an inexcusable week 1 loss to Florida State. Inexcusable. Team that didn't end up being very good. But from that point forward, they went 11-3. They went 10-1 for the rest of the regular season. They went 11-3 overall, and all 3 of those losses were to playoff teams, with one of those being the national champions in Indiana, and one of them being a rematch against a very, very good Georgia football team. So 2 of those were blowouts, which is why I say you can't put them in if the number 1 team plays the number 4 team, the number 4 team's still pretty elite, but they just ended up going against the number 1 team. But because of the way Alabama got beat, you can't call them, one of the elite teams. So they got beat down enough by Indiana and by Georgia to say they're not in that elite category. They're not in that next tier, that great, but they were a really, really good football team. So I get you not wanting to be hurt next year, because I did think it was a national championship contending team, and they just weren't ready or on that level. But they did better than we all probably give them credit for. They really did. Clint, do you see Jaira Edwards stepping up soon and possibly establishing himself as maybe a near future starter? Yes, I do. Granted, it's not a guarantee, but yes, I do. I think that he is in a position where he can become a key rotational piece and possibly even a starter. I've continuously said I won't go as far as naming him a starter or predicting that he's going to start. I'm telling you that I would not be surprised at all, if he ended up overtaking Red Morgan because of his talent. Nothing Red Morgan would do to lose that job. But yes, he's going to be a dude sooner than later. Sharpshooter Podcast, that beer pong comment is priceless, because I understand anybody who has played understands. I feel like we all get a little overthinking. Anytime I'd be playing back in the day, I'm like, let me have about 2 more beers and all of y'all are done. And everybody likes to think and overstate. That's my, everybody's talked about the glory days in high school and playing football and everything. And everybody likes to embellish and say how much better they were than they actually were. Or, I guess mine's on the beer pong table. You could probably talk to many of my fraternity brothers and stuff, and they'd be like, yeah, he wasn't all that great. He thought he was, but I enjoyed it either way. All right. As much as I would love to keep this going, so many more comments. We've gone over an hour. I normally like to get out of here. We're 30, 45 minutes in for this morning show, but you guys just were bringing it so much, and there was so much to talk about that we just kept it going. We might end up being back today. Don't want to make any promises. Like I said, my brother's expecting a child soon today, and so at any point, we're dropping everything and we're going to see said baby. I have no idea the gender. Going to find out today. Mama didn't want to know. My brother did want to know, but he lost that battle in a major way. So they're going to be finding out today as well. But I'm excited, very much excited to see my new niece or nephew today. But if anything major happens, we will be hearing from Kane Womack around 11. So in a couple of hours, depending on what he says, depending on the timing of everything else. If he says anything major with the Bandit Wolf conversation, we might need to go live as well. So that is going to be, it's going to be something to keep an eye on for sure. Appreciate all you guys for being here. The animal, I don't comment often, but listen all the time. Thank you for all you do, Clint. Family first. Appreciate you. Thank you so much. Thank you guys so much for being here. Definitely hit that like button, Agent K. Appreciate you bringing that up. And G Limit, thank you for the congratulations. Yeah, I'm excited. Once again, thank all you guys for being here. I sometimes get fired up, and I got the microphone, so it's somewhat unfair because I can go on my little rants and defend my points and all that, and you guys just have the comments. We are planning to eventually get a call-in show, but I appreciate everybody continuously bringing it and giving us stuff to discuss, and we don't have to have the same opinion. We're going to have different opinions. That's totally fine. Just please always be respectful about it. That is all I ask. You can, to me, you can say, Clint, you're flat out wrong. I think you're dumb, and I mean, but I'm talking about as far as the players and stuff, just be respectful, criticize if it warrants criticism, just be productive with it, because there's still guys who are representing that Crimson A that we all love and appreciate so much. And so we want to appreciate those guys who do. There are guys, all of them. So thank you guys for being here. Thank you guys for being a part of the family. It means the absolute world to me. If you haven't already, like this video, subscribe to the YouTube channel. That helps us out tremendously. And then if you can, have anywhere where you listen to a podcast, or just have an app. Maybe you don't listen to podcasts anymore. I really use YouTube a lot, so I don't do the podcast thing myself necessarily. But for anybody that does or has that on their phone, please use that podcast app. Go search the Cover Crimson Podcast Network and hit that download button. At that point, you are done. If you never want to open that app ever again, that's fine with me. That's all we need from you guys. That would be a tremendous help to us. It is a one-time thing. It's free. It's also free on YouTube. And then also get on over to rowback.com. Use the promo code Crimson20 to get 20% off your order. And we will talk to you guys soon.